Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining this month's webinar. My name is Janiece Irby, and I am a Talent Management Associate here at TalentQuest. I specialize in organizational development and performance management consulting. So because I have extensive experience conducting research and analyzing statistical data, I typically find myself heavily involved in a variety of analytically driven projects, one of which being organizational surveys. So today we'll be diving into employee engagement surveys and how they can be used to measure, understand, and enhance your organization's culture. Today we'll want to cover what true engagement looks like, the value in administering engagement surveys, trends in engagement drivers and survey metrics, how to identify your target audience, understanding and communicating survey results, and lastly and most importantly, how to maximize your time and resources. So let's start by defining employee engagement and what true employee engagement looks like. A simple definition is the emotional commitment an employee has to the organization and its goals, resulting in the use of discretionary effort. Think of discretionary effort as what we want to do versus the minimum requirement of the job being what we have to do. So these employees that are highly engaged are going to be your employees that typically go above and beyond what's required of them. Within an engaged workforce, you'll see what results in what we like to call the engagement profit chain. Because employees care more, they are more productive, they give better service, they even stay in their jobs longer, all of which leads to happier customers who buy more and refer more often, which ultimately drives sales and profits higher. So we'll keep this engagement profit chain in mind as we go through the presentation today. We want to take a second here just to talk a little bit more about each of those links that are found within the engagement profit chain. The first of which being job satisfaction. Research indicates that if employees are engaged with the company, that their job satisfaction levels increase. These employees are also very invested in the success of the business and have a high level of commitment and loyalty. Another important thing to note is that satisfied employees tend to act as ambassadors for the company, meaning that they promote and support the company's mission, strategy, and brand. As you may have assumed already, engaged employees are often your top performers. Again, those are those committed to going the extra mile to achieve business success. As an employee becomes more engaged, their absenteeism lowers, and their motivation increases, leading to increased productivity. So what this means is that the more engaged the employee is, the more efficient and driven to succeed they become. According to a recent research study performed by the Hay Group, offices with engaged employees were as much as 43% more productive. And 43% is a huge number in terms of productivity. So we want to keep that in mind as one of the benefits of having an engaged workforce. Also, we want to point out the differences in retention and recruitment. So employees who are engaged significantly lower the risk of turnover for the company. As engaged employees are more invested in the success of the company, they also become more loyal. And simply put, when employees are satisfied and engaged, they are far more likely to stay with the organization. So if you couple that with retention, businesses that have a highly engaged workforce have an increased ability to attract new and qualified employees. So how does having an engaged workforce impact the company's bottom line? Well, here it is. The more engaged your employees are, the more efficient and productive they become, lowering the operating costs and increasing the profit margin. A study by Wyatt Watson found that companies that have highly engaged employees produce 26% higher revenue per employee. So if the impact wasn't already large enough, the increased profitability that comes from having an engaged workforce is definitely something that you want to take note of. And then another added bonus that results from an engaged workforce is increased motivation. Engaged employees perform at a higher level and bring passion and interest to their job, which often leads to innovation in the workplace. As highly engaged employees feel that they have a real stake in the organization, they tend to strive to efficiently create new products, services, and processes. Also, collaboration within the workplace amongst engaged employees and top management can lead to overall organizational growth. So let's talk a little bit about strategic benefits of actually administering an engagement survey and why this matters. Organizational surveys have been widely used for quickly and efficiently gathering data from a large number of employees and can be the most effective way to measure engagement. The strategic benefits associated with administering engagement surveys start with giving your employees a voice. Engagement surveys can give the employees the opportunity to establish a two-way communication and involve employees in the development process by giving them a direct voice to your management team. Being actively involved in the planning process makes employees realize that they have a stake in the company and that their opinions are truly valued. Through an engagement survey, you'll also be able to understand employee characteristics, opinions, and attitudes, and assess behaviors in employees' day-to-day work experience. A long-term benefit in the creation of your surveys are baseline measures, meaning you'll be able to benchmark the data for comparison purposes. So once you've administered your engagement survey more than once, you can look at a particular result and compare them with previous year's data, creating a sort of year-over-year analysis. This type of analysis will allow you to identify trends across factors or any significant changes in the data and adjust your strategic plan appropriately. Lastly, knowing how the company measures on areas such as employee satisfaction, management and leadership, effectiveness, and working environment, you'll be able to give tangible objectives for change. Assessing engagement will also allow you to identify areas of best practice within your organization. So let's say that a specific organizational department might have a very high rate of engagement, and by analyzing the data, you can gain insight onto how they are achieving it and possibly even implement these as best practices throughout your organization. Simply put, engagement survey feedback will give you valuable, actionable data that you can implement for the entire organization. Because good engagement surveys need to engage at a very deep level, it also needs to uncover what employees care about, what they think is critical to their own futures, and even what aspects of their job may be keeping them up at night and distract them from the quality of their work. When you ask questions that uncover that type of information or those types of emotions, you can learn what really motivates people, and from there you can tap into that motivation and bring out their best. So when determining what topics to cover in your survey, you'll want to focus on aspects of job satisfaction and engagement that are commonly linked to organizational performance. So here you see a chart that represents engagement drivers, and extensive research and recent trends in engagement have revealed the following as being key. So here you see quality of life. This represents job security, safety, and work-life balance. You also see the work category, which includes empowerment and autonomy, sense of accomplishment, and work tasks. You have the people category, which includes senior leadership, direct leadership, supervision, and collaboration. The opportunities category, which covers career opportunities, learning and development, total rewards, which includes compensation and benefits, recognition, and brand and reputation. And then lastly, the company practices. So this can include anything from communication, diversity, infrastructure, performance management, customer focus, innovation, talent, and staffing. So when you're thinking when you're trying to determine what to cover in your engagement survey and what topics to include, you really want to focus on these key areas and tap into these areas which have been proven to be linked to organizational performance and engagement. Some of the survey metrics that we commonly see gathered from these drivers include individual job characteristics. So those include questions about whether or not the employee enjoys their job. Management and leadership. So this can be direct management and or senior leadership. Coworker relationships, performance management, work processes, compensation and benefits, and culture and or work environment. So these are the topics that are most commonly used on engagement surveys, and they tap into those drivers that we previously discussed. When it comes to gathering feedback, employers often debate which employees to include on the survey. Do all employees affect your organization's engagement level equally? Which types of employees most accurately measure engagement? And we recommend surveying each employee. If they work for your organization in any way, shape, or form, they should be included on your survey. There are benefits that are associated with conducting your survey organization-wide versus other methods. First, surveying all employees will give you a more accurate and comprehensive view of your engagement level. Gathering feedback from all employee types at every location will allow you to assess specific strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats throughout your organization. From there, you'll be able to compare and contrast different employee groups. When you survey every employee, you will have the ability to slice and dice the data, which allows you to compare and contrast specific metrics. Are employees at unique locations happy with the leadership? Are part-time employees satisfied with their benefits? Dividing up the data will help you answer these questions. It's also no secret that one survey initiative will save you time and resources. Multiple survey projects require organizational leaders to explain the reasoning for multiple projects, conduct unique surveys at different points in time, compile data for each different project, and analyze and share each initiative's results with the organization. In order to save yourself some time, which is obviously very important, and to save your employees the hassle of having to complete multiple surveys, it's best to conduct one organization-wide survey. Also, consistently gathering feedback via one survey project shows that the organization values employee feedback and takes employee engagement seriously. By initiating different assessment projects, you risk breaking that trust. Some employees may feel that they were left out and they may not understand why their feedback wasn't asked, or they may even doubt your intent to follow up with the results. And ultimately, the goal of this initiative is to improve employee engagement. So measuring employee engagement under one initiative will give you comprehensive feedback that allows you to conduct an in-depth analysis. The information gathered from the survey can be leveraged to implement effective action plans, which act as crucial tools to improving overall engagement. So let's jump into survey data. Analyzing the survey data can be the most complex and time-consuming process involved in the administration of your survey, partly because of the in-depth analyses that should be done. So some of which will be quantitative analysis. So this will include calculating the averages on each topic and item, but also looking at the standard deviations associated with those averages. So the standard deviations represent the spread of the data. So how closely together or clustered were the responses from employees, or vice versa? How far apart? How large was the spread? what did they range from? Do all of their answers consistently coincide with each other, or do people feel a lot of different ways about a certain item or topic? You can also do some t-tests to compare groups and find statistically significant differences if they exist. That's going to be very important to see where those key differences lie across the data set. And you can also do what we call a favorability analysis. So with this analysis, it gives you a more visual way of interpreting the standard deviation. So it's just another way to look at the spread of the data, and it actually gives you a frequency count of how many people rated an item as favorable, neutral, or unfavorable, and it provides additional insights to the other analyses that you would have conducted. In addition, a lot of surveys not only have rated items, but you will see that there are some open-ended essay types of questions that are included in your surveys. So with these, you will have to do some sort of qualitative analysis. So with these comments, you'll have to identify common themes seen throughout the open-ended questions, and this requires a more in-depth interpretation and categorization of the themes. So the qualitative analysis can be more complex than running the numbers with the quantitative analysis. And then lastly, you'll want to generate some sort of report or presentation that summarizes the survey data and gets it to a place to where you can communicate it not only with your high-level executives, but with the organization as a whole. One very important piece that you don't want to leave out when conducting your engagement survey is communicating the results. This is huge in terms of wrapping up your entire survey initiative. So using the survey data sends a message to employees that organizational leaders value their input and respect their time. And it builds employee confidence that leadership will take action to respond to their concerns. It's also important when communicating the results that you act quickly. So once you've received the survey results, you should move as efficiently as possible to communicate the data and apply it. It's important to act while the survey is still fresh in the employees' minds and that there's not a large time gap in between. So we definitely don't want to wait, 6 to 8 months after employees have taken the survey to come back and communicate the results and any next steps that the organization has identified based off of the data that was gathered. So we want to do it as quick as possible while it's still fresh on everyone's minds. And then you want to ensure that employees understand why you decided to take action in certain areas over others. So where can positive change be most critical? How does this action plan coincide with existing company goals and strategies? These are good questions to ask yourself when deciding on next steps as an organization. So maximizing your time and resources is the goal overall when conducting an engagement survey. And web-based surveys are powerful tools that, when accurately designed, implemented, analyzed, and interpreted, can be reliable and cost-effective than any other approach available. So the widespread use of surveys have led many to believe that the process is simple and straightforward. However, as we've discussed throughout this presentation, we're starting to realize that administering an engagement survey is actually pretty complex, and it requires very careful management to make sure that it is done properly. At TalentQuest, we provide consulting expertise in survey design, development, implementation, and interpretation. So when we talk about design, questions can come to rise as, how many items should the survey include? What type of survey items would be most effective? Should we use a Likert scale? Should we use ranking questions? What about multiple choice or open-ended essay questions? Or maybe you want to use a combination of different types of questions. So we'll provide recommendations on the most effective method for your organization. It could be that one organization should use Likert scales, or another organization should use more open-ended essay questions. It'll really be catered to the needs of your organization and what you're really trying to measure and get out of your survey. We can also discuss customized branding. So you see here on your screen that there is a TalentQuest branding on a screenshot from a survey, but we want to make this experience as customized as possible. So adding your company's logo or creating that branding for you is definitely a touch that we want to implement for you. And in terms of development, you can start with questions from scratch. You can create your own questions. Most organizations create some sort of team that is focused on this survey initiative that will come up with those questions, or you can use a validated bank of items as a starting point and then customize it to fit your organization. So there is a validated list of engagement survey items and topics that you're more than welcome to start from, and then further customize it from there. Implementation and support is a huge piece of the engagement survey process. And there's no need to learn another online system or a cloud-based system. TalentQuest takes care of the implementation process as well as all your support needs. So that includes sending survey reminders, status updates about how many people have completed the survey, how many people have not completed the survey. We want to take that process off of your hands. So that frees up time for you and your HR staff or your leadership staff to focus on other pressing priorities. Also, by going through a third party to do the survey and administer it, it sort of gives your employees confidence in knowing that their responses are kept anonymous and confidential. When they see that this invitation is not coming from an internal source or email address, it gives them more confidence to answer in a more honest and truthful manner, knowing that a third party is analyzing the results. And analysis and interpretation. So we spoke before about analyzing the data and how that can be the most time-consuming process of all. So running that quantitative analysis as well as understanding and interpreting the qualitative results requires a necessary level of expertise. In interpreting the data, how do I compile this data in a way that makes sense for my organization, our company goals, and our overall business strategy? We can develop a high-level executive report and a corresponding presentation that walks through the key findings as well as provide detailed analytics and comment analyses. So here you see some screenshots of what these sample favorability analysis graphs look like, your most favorable rated items versus your least favorable rated items. And then also a way that you can split the data or cut the data. You can cut it by position or department, and then you can see those differences between departments as well. So as we wrap up, here are just a few key takeaways that we went through today. So we've covered sort of the what, the why, the how, and the who throughout this presentation. So the what obviously being, what is employee engagement? Remember, when you think of employee engagement, we're referring to those employees that are highly committed and loyal to the organization and exhibit that discretionary effort. So they go above and beyond what is required of them on a daily basis. Why does employee engagement matter to the workforce? Remember the engagement profit chain and all of the links that are included in that. That was job satisfaction, productivity, innovation, those type of factors. And then also, why should your organization administer an engagement survey? So we spoke briefly about the strategic benefits involved in administering an engagement survey. And one of the big questions is, how are we going to do this? How do we know what drives engagement, and how do we know what the right questions are that we should be asking? So think about those drivers of engagement. and those overarching themes that are commonly seen in engagement surveys when deciding on what topics to use and what items and questions to ask throughout your survey. And then the who being your target audience, who should take the survey. So we spoke about organization-wide being the best practice. So organization-wide, that is going to be your target audience. All of your employees should be included in your engagement survey. And then lastly, the most critical piece is analyzing the data and communicating results. This is the key to driving organizational change and development. What I like to say are just remember that it's all in the data. Everything that you need will be in the data, and that is your key to really move forward as an organization. So now I'd like to open up the floor for any questions that we may have regarding the presentation or engagement surveys. We'll take a few, and then also you'll see here that the contact email address is mharvey@talentquest.com. Send Michael an email. He'll definitely get your questions over to the appropriate individuals. But we have some questions that came in. So how many questions should be included in a survey? Do you offer assistance in developing appropriate survey questions? So this is a great question. In terms of how many items should be included, we typically don't like to go too far over the 50 range. So 50 is a good number to stay around. You don't want your survey to be too short because you may not have tapped into all of those important engagement drivers, but you also don't want your survey to be too long. So you don't want your employees to either stop taking it in the middle or start getting lax in their responses towards the end just so that they can finish. So we like to stay around the 50 mark. And then, yes, we do offer assistance in developing appropriate survey questions. So we'll, have that kickoff conversation and sort of gauge what's important to you and your organization and why you've decided to start this initiative. And then we'll move from there to really focus on the types of questions that we should be asking for you. And another question that came in is, what time of year is best to administer a survey and why? This is also great. A lot of people don't think about the time period to send out a survey. So we definitely, as best practice, you definitely don't want to send a survey out around any holidays. So Christmas, Thanksgiving, or times when a lot of your employees will be taking vacations. So during the summer months, probably not going to be an ideal time to launch an engagement survey. So as long as you launch your survey maybe in the fall, or be careful that you're not closing it or initiating it around a holiday, you should be fine as best practice. Another question is, our hourly employees may not be engaged due to management. How do I get cooperation from upper management? They do not like the compassion approach. So that's a very good question, and that's probably something that we would have to dig a little bit deeper into and really have some conversations around what's going on specifically in your organization and what's causing them to feel that way. But we definitely want to engage those hourly employees. So this is another reason why we say do an organization-wide survey. Without getting responses or feedback from those hourly employees, you may have not been revealed to you that they're having issues with management. So that's a great question. We really want to dig into that a little bit more to understand the cause of that, but definitely want to draw those hourly employees in to the survey to get that valuable feedback. Another question is, we have issues with technology. Do you have any option for a paper-based survey? We do. You can always do a paper-based survey. Of course, we are pro technology and web-based, but if technology is an issue for you or your organization, there isn't any reason why that should be your only hang-up. So if technology is your only hang-up, it's not a reason why you want to X your engagement survey as a whole. So we can talk through what that looks like, what a paper-based survey looks like, what analysis looks like in terms of compiling the results from a paper-based survey, but that's definitely something that we can look into and find a solution that could work in that case. Okay, and another question is, what are some best practices to communicate survey results back to employees? Is there a preferred time frame or method of communication? So in terms of best practice, organizations usually tend to meet with a special teams group or a team that takes charge of this initiative. So that high-level executive report would typically only go first to that group, and then from there it will be communicated to the entire organization. So once next steps have already been identified, because it's preferable to communicate the results to your employees once you've already identified next steps. You don't want to throw out potential negatives or a lot of areas of opportunity to your organization. The first question that they're going to ask is, how are we going to solve this, or what are we going to do to move forward? So you want to have the answers to those questions before presenting the results to your employees. And you can do this at a company meeting or at a time where you're meeting with the majority of your workforce. That is going to be the best time. I wouldn't suggest sending it out via email. I would suggest doing it in person, maybe at a retreat or at a company meeting. And then the preferred time is always going to be as soon as possible. So we want to communicate the results as soon as you can without letting a lot of time lapse between the survey and the results. Well, I want to thank all of you guys for joining this month's webinar on engagement surveys. I hope that it was helpful. If you have any more questions, feel free to send them to mharvey@talentquest.com, and we will answer them for you. Thank you, and have a good afternoon.